GoForThe2.com. We're into the Week 11 predictions for the college football season. Let's get right into it. West Virginia travels to Austin to take on the Longhorns. It's homecoming in Austin. Look for Texas and Charlie Strong to be up for this ball game. Defensively, they match up very well against West Virginia. They're giving up 177 passing yards per game and have 27 sacks through 9 ball games. You look at West Virginia, the last 3 games, they traveled to Stillwater 3 weeks ago, beat up on Oklahoma State, came back home for a very emotional game against TCU. They lost that ball game in the last minute, now have to get on the road to travel to Austin. It's not an easy road trip for West Virginia. You look at West Virginia and Clint Trickett playing very dangerously. They're minus 12 in turnover margin overall. That's 121st in the nation out of 125 teams. They now have to go on the road. On the road, you need to create turnovers, and West Virginia is not doing that. I like Texas in this matchup. You look at Swoops, seems to be getting more comfortable at the quarterback position. They had a dominant road victory over their arch rival Texas Tech, a rivalry game. They come back home on homecoming. Very solid offense and defensive lines for Texas, and I think they get the victory on Saturday, 30-24 over West Virginia. Notre Dame travels to Tempe to take on Arizona State. Arizona State pulled it out in overtime against a solid Utah team, 19-16. But you look at their defense, giving up 291 passing yards per game. They're giving up 191 rushing yards per game. You look at the flip side with Notre Dame. Everett Golson having a solid season, completing over 62% of his passes, 22 touchdown passes, 7 touchdown runs. He's a dual threat quarterback. They have a very heavy offensive line that I think will try to pound it at Arizona State's defensive front. Notre Dame will be without leading tackler Joe Schmidt, but I think they can make up for it. Jalen Smith, look for him to step up. He's the second leading tackler on that team. And you look at Notre Dame's 2 big play wide receivers and William Fuller and Corey Robinson between them, 75 total receptions, 13 touchdowns. I think they'll be able to find holes in the Arizona State secondary, and I think that's the mismatch. You look at Arizona State's offensive line giving up 22 sacks through 8 ball games. I think that's the difference as well. Notre Dame gets a hard-fought 31-27 victory over Arizona State. Notre Dame is 3-0 all-time over ASU. I think they make it 4-0 after Saturday. Let's talk about Oregon moving to Salt Lake City to take on Utah. Very difficult Utah team. When you look at Utah, they should have pulled that game out in Tempe. Very solid defensive line led by Nate Orchard, who has 12 sacks. Utah leads the country in sacks with 39. They're able to run the football, rushing for 198 rushing yards per game, and a very underrated running back in Devontae Booker, 5.4 yards per carry. And you look at the way you have to beat Oregon. You have to be able to create pressure on Marcus Mariota the way Arizona did a few weeks ago to get that upset. And I think Utah can get Oregon into that type of ball game. Couple the fact that Salt Lake City is a very difficult place to play. Look for Utah to methodically work down the field, take time of possession away from Oregon, and I think they get the upset at home in Salt Lake City, calling for a 31-27 victory for Utah over Oregon to really take away Oregon's chances for a playoff run and to really turn the Pac-12 into some close race with a bunch of teams looking to make a move. Let's talk about Michigan playing Northwestern. Michigan, dominant home victory over Indiana. They now go on the road. Can they keep the momentum going? They were able to rush the football at home and create turnovers, and I think that momentum carries over as Michigan has an outside chance to go to a bowl game. If they can win out the rest of the year, Michigan will go to a bowl. I think Michigan on the road in Northwestern, these games are traditionally close. Look for Brady Hoke and the offensive staff to pound the football at Northwestern, and I think that they get a decisive road victory, and they put 2 wins together back-to-back over Northwestern. The Wildcats not playing very well, coming off a devastating loss last week, so I think Michigan keeps the momentum running and gets a 37-31 victory over Northwestern on Saturday. Let's talk about one more game. Very interesting matchup. TCU, Kansas State. TCU looks to be the better team both offensively and defensively. You look at that quarterback, Trev Boykin, dynamic, 22 touchdowns, only 4 INTs, added another 4 touchdowns on the ground. But you look at TCU's balance, 335 passing yards per game, only 214 rushing yards per game. I mean, they're very balanced. They can run, they can pass. You look at their offensive line, very heavy, but on defense is where the difference occurs. TCU only giving up 21 points per game, plus 15 in turnover margin. That's number 1 in the country. They can create sacks. They have 24 sacks through 8 ball games. And you look at Kansas State's offensive line, surrendering 16 sacks on the year. I think TCU can really force Jake Waters into quick reads and to short to intermediate passes. I don't think he'll have great success with his receivers of Tyler Lockett and Curry Sexton. And I think this is a dominant TCU home victory over a solid Kansas State team. I think it's in the area of 45-31. TCU gets the 2-touchdown victory and really propels them as the front runner in the Big 12. Stay with me all season long at GoForThe2.com and the Weekly Blitz. Have a great weekend, everyone.